At 6:15 a.m., by the time the S-400 locked on, it was already too late. Precision didn't wait for defenses, and physics did the rest. On August 24th, 15 Ukrainian Beavers lifted from the dark like a string of small, urgent signals, propellers whining, batteries warm, autopilots humming through pre-planned waypoints. They crossed the Gulf of Finland on borrowed sleep, engines pushed to the edge after a 960-kilometer transit. Fuel gauges slid toward empty. In a bunker outside Kyiv, operators watched tiled telemetry screens showing altitude, heading, battery level, and a shaky thermal thumbnail. No one had their hands on the controls. They sent inputs, made corrections, and sometimes overrode the system. The mission was simple to describe, but hard to do. Get through layered defenses, reach the cryogenic plant at Luga, and place warheads exactly where the refinery's safety systems were weakest. They were not consumer toys. These were UJ-26 Beavers, purpose-built, sleek composite frames, optimized for low observability and maximum expendability. Each airframe cost a fraction of what it would take to engage it, making them a calculated gamble in a war of attrition. In the control room, operators spoke in clipped, urgent phrases. One operator watched a steady stream of telemetry, calculating altitude, speed, and battery life. Another watched the thermal feed closely, following faint heat signatures through the morning mist. A third sorted through radio chatter and electromagnetic interference, picking out signals that might give away the drone's positions. Outside, forecasted fog and rising temperatures fed into every trajectory calculation, as each change could become an ally or a deadly threat. The air itself joined the fight. Gusts and shifting light warped the sensors, forcing the team to mix precision with quick improvisation. A Russian patrol boat cut a silhouette through the morning haze. Its 14.5mm mounted gun woke to life and stitched a line of fire across the sky. Tracers arced and slid under the flight path. The formation leader reacted, a programmed evasive that flicked the whole swarm into a controlled scatter. The patrol's crew saw shapes. They fired missiles meant for helicopters at what looked like ghosts. 3 Igla-S rounds were fired, tracking infrared flickers that were not hot enough to be aircraft, but were enough to warrant a response. One missile missed and went down in a pale arc into the Baltic. Another detonated between targets, a false victory that chewed empty air. The third found a trailing Beaver. It detonated close, brief and violent, turning the composite and wiring into a blossom of fire and smoke. A machine fell. 14 remained. Operators recomposed attacking vectors, patched waypoints, and rebalanced flight patterns. The formation tightened and continued. Luga lay ahead, its industrial silhouette a dark promise through the fog. Long-range surveillance had already whispered the swarm's presence to a battery of systems that had been sleeping with their eyes half open. The S-400's radar had seen them minutes earlier, but classified them as insignificant blips. Composite and fiberglass reflect little radar energy. At a distance, they were indistinguishable from goals. When the S-400 switched from search to target, the operator felt the old calibration rules fail. Traditional locks sought the hard metallic return of aircraft. These returns were thin. The S-400 painted the sky with a 3 GHz beam, looking for something to bite. The Beavers were designed to have very little to bite. Faced with low RCS contacts, the commander tried missile-assisted acquisition. 2 .48 N6DM rounds boiled out of their canisters and arced toward predicted intercept zones. Each missile cost a sum measured in millions and hugged a physics envelope that favored heavy aircraft. The Beavers dove toward the wave height. The missiles attempted steep, near-vertical dives to close the geometry. Control surfaces that behaved like wings stalled in the thin air as the pitch angle exceeded their design. The missiles lost aerodynamic control and found water instead of steel. It was a waste of high-cost munitions against low-cost targets, math disguised as tragedy. The crew switched to different seekers, 9M96E2. These came with gas dynamic thrusters, tiny lateral rockets that allow extreme agility without the need for airflow over fins. They could pull many tens of Gs and dance through fog like predatory wasps. One found a lead Beaver, computed an intercept, and detonated its warhead. 200 tungsten pellets punched the frame into dust. Debris multiplied radar returns and masked surviving signatures. The remaining beavers scattered, turning a single formation into a fractured swarm. Some climbed to exploit thermal layers. Others hugged the sea, turning the air-water interface into a shield. The airspace fractured into engagement boxes. Panstir systems had been deployed in overlapping arcs, a deliberate chessboard of missiles and cannons intended to remove the advantage of maneuver. Their doctrine was conservative. They fired a missile, acquired feedback, adjusted, and fired again. Shoot, look, shoot. Against a nimble adversary that refused to behave predictably, the method demanded patience. The Panstir that locked on launched a 57 E6 missile at the apparent leader. The Beavers executed a wagon wheel maneuver, a spiraling formation that retained forward momentum while constantly altering aspects. Proportional navigation algorithms, built to intercept steady-state vectors, found their predictions undermined. The missile missed. The Panstir gunner switched tactics and lengthened lead time. Bring out the twin-barrel 30mm cannon, force a beaten zone. The cannon poured 5,000 rounds per minute into a cube of sky. 4 beavers entered, 2 came through with polymer skins shredded and electronics smoking. The count dropped again. 9 continued. The sky became a ledger of expense, pellets and shrapnel accounting for small victories. Farther inland, other sectors lit up with similar engagements. Command centers reported multiple vectors, alarms piling on like snow on an unchecked roof. 14 more drone groups pushed across western approaches in coordinated waves, each designed to overload a single area and bleed the enemy's reserves. Reinforcements were unavailable. The Russian network was engaged on multiple fronts. At Luga, the defenders turned to electronic countermeasures. A Kasuka-4 loomed like a metal container on wheels and filled the air with a harsh, intentional hiss. The Kasuka knew how to look. It swept frequencies from 1.2 to 5.8 gigahertz and concentrated beams at likely control bands. Sweeps and dwells probed for signal fingerprints. Once a transmission was located, the Kasuka would lock and hammer it with noise. The Beavers were not simple RC toys. Their controllers used frequency hopping, hundreds of channels flitting in pseudo-random sequences that made single-frequency blocks useless. When barrage jamming questioned the logic, the machines switched modes. Autonomy took over, terrain contour matching using radar altimeters and preloaded topographic templates, a chain of local knowledge written into silicon. Every bridge, every hill, every path through trees and over water had been mapped and loaded. They could navigate blind. Autonomy bypassed deliberate radio interference, letting the Beavers fly even without live control. But it introduced new risks like map-based surprises that no operator could predict. Through the thickening fog, a steel construction crane suddenly emerged, towering where none had existed when the mission maps were built. 3 Beavers collided with the metal at full speed. Composite frames splintered instantly against unforgiving I-beams, sending shards scattering like brittle shrapnel. 6 drones survived, spinning back into formation as battery warnings blinked 18% across their monitors. Every second now counts. The mission wasn't over, but the margin for error had evaporated. Every maneuver, every calculation would be decisive in the final approach. The S-400 commander faced an arithmetic choice. His missiles represented a banking ledger, millions per shot. These small airframes represented tiny costs. Economics entered combat calculus. A directive came down to economize. Bring Zu-23 twin 23mm cannons into play. Optical sights and human gunners demanded a visual signature long enough to solve a firing solution. The Beavers denied that window. They tumbled and rolled unpredictably at speeds approaching 150 kilometers per hour. Tracers crisscrossed the fogu. Old-school gunnery filled the sky with hope. 1 burst connected. A drone failed mid-roll. 5 stayed aloft. Luga was within single-digit kilometers. Fog rose as the sun warmed the surface. The veil that had concealed movement now condensed into a denser, more treacherous curtain. Sensors with million-dollar price tags, lost-reach thermal systems that found aircraft at kilometers now found only heated metal and the ghostly warmth of exhausted bearings at close range. Detection ranges collapsed. Command shifted to area saturation. Guns fired blindly into volumes where math predicted the drones must pass walls of lead-formed invisible hedges. The Beavers dipped to 3 meters above the Baltic, riding a thin layer where radar echoes and hydrodynamic splashes complicated pursuit. Salt spray fouled cameras. Video feeds stuttered into gray static. The operators were reduced to numbers: altitude, speed, bearing, faith in coordinates, and calculation. Spoofing came next. Powerful ground transmitters began to overlay false position data, dominating the weak satellite signals and making GPS receivers point elsewhere. 2 beavers, obedient to their corrupted coordinates, banked sharply and entered the drink. Their radar returns blinked and vanished. 3 remained. Port security readied shoulder-fired iglas on rooftops and towers. The seekers used cool detectors to see mid-wave infrared differences invisible to human eyes. Yet the Beaver's 20-horsepower motors ran only marginally hotter than ambient. In warm weather, their exhaust signature was minimal. Iglas found one bird by sound and proximity rather than heat. The warhead detonated 5 meters from its target. Fragments shredded composites and severed control cables. A craft spiraled into a tank farm in a ragged arc. 2 pressed on between 40-meter petroleum towers like small, dangerous fish threading between pilings. Helicopters joined, Mi-8s beating the air with rotors, door gunners firing PKMs at fleeting shadows. Downwash became a weapon of environmental manipulation. Gusts could slam a drone into infrastructure or blow clear thin curtains of fog to give a momentary line of sight. That trade-off was used deliberately. For a heartbeat, operators saw structure, the refinery's maze of pipes and the cryogenic towers that registered as stock cold even through blurring lenses. Automation and safety algorithms in the plant did what they were designed to do: detect uncommanded aircraft and initiate emergency protocols. Vents opened. Methane and ethane, flammable and invisible, were bled from tanks en masse to avoid overpressure. The site transformed into a fenced field of potential fuel, an invisible cloud waiting for a spark. Defense shifted again. Water cannon trucks moved into intercept positions. Their jets were industrial, able to tear through wood and strip flight surfaces. One drone entered a water stream and lost a propeller, spinning into concrete. Its warhead survived intact but inert in terms of damage delivered. The survivors angled toward the cryogenic plant like predators sensing vital organs. One got a thermal lock. An operator in Kiev abandoned high-bandwidth links and accepted the 2-second latency of an Iridium satellite relay to take manual control. Latency made pilotage a predictive art. Commands sent were guesses about where the drone would be 2 seconds after the operator thought it. It demanded an anticipatory, almost chess-like approach to flying. Battery states became their own countdowns: 12%, 9%. The craft traced weaving routes through pipes and catwalks, each corrective bleed of power calculating the probability of success. Ground teams at the plant fired rifles and shotguns, steel against the metallic maze, clanging as bullets met piping and structure. One stray burst shattered the drone's camera cluster, plunging control into telemetry-only mode. The operator flew on dead reckoning. Altitude 3 meters, speed 40 kilometers per hour, heading fixed, target bearing estimated. Inputs were mathematical and instinctive. The drone became a steel bullet without sight, but with momentum. Civilian GPS would once have been precise enough to place an aircraft within 5 meters. Metal structures created multipath errors that biased readings by tens of meters. Spoofing amplified that error. The operator's view through a 2-kilobit telemetry channel became algebra. When you send left, the drone has already advanced 20 meters before the correction is realized. Piloting by projection replaced piloting by sight. The drone threaded a path like a stone finding a riverbed, guided by inertia, by predictive control, by a plan that accepted uncertainty and leveraged momentum as a form of control. The approach to the fractionation unit narrowed into a corridor. The facility's cryogenic columns were colder than anything else in the landscape, naked cold that registered on thermal bands as negative signatures. One operator, fingers numb from concentration, took the drone into a low-angle dive, converting altitude into speed to keep the craft stable as the battery sagged. A venting protocol had created a layer of mixed hydrocarbons, methane, ethane, propane, an invisible curtain whose ignition threshold needed only the right spark. Every defensive action at the plant had, in aggregate, made the environment more volatile. Economics and safety protocols had conspired in a practical irony. To reduce the risk of pressure explosions, the plant had vented flammable gas into a field that could serve as fuel for an external ignition source. The drone's warhead was not a simple explosive. 20 kilograms of thermite-enhanced charges, aluminum and iron oxide mixed to burn at thousands of degrees, were designed to initiate a high-temperature breach. Thermite burns with no respect for water or foam. Once ignited, it would digest steel. The impact fuse was mechanical. It required only momentum and a hard meeting with metal to function. The operator had seconds of power and a single chance at geometry. A water cannon grazed a prop. Gyros screamed, recalibrated. Battery warnings flashed to critical. The operator found a window, pushed the nose down, accepted a dead transmission, and trusted the math. The drone became a guided bullet, mass and speed carrying it into an engineered target. Impact was a metallic crunch that the plant's alarms registered as a structural anomaly. For a beat, the world held. Thermite ignited, white-hot and merciless, burning through a column's skin in seconds. Molten steel spat into pressurized vessels. The energy released vaporized liquid hydrocarbons in an instant, and the pressure cascaded outward. Pipes ruptured sequentially. A fuel-air cloud ballooned and then lit. The first fireball rose, brilliant and immediate, carving an orange column through the morning haze. Windows shattered across a kilometer's radius. Superheated fragments and overpressure finished fragile installations. At the moment of ignition, there was no time for rhetoric. There was only the calibrated consequence of design and physics. The thermite set off a localized blast that functioned as a primer. The vented clouds transformed it into a fuel-air explosion that raced outwards at supersonic velocity, overpressure smashing structures and setting adjacent vessels to fail in turn. A chain reaction unfolded with brutal mathematical logic. Containment breached, adjacent pressure vessels overloaded, failing in sequence. Mechanical linkages failed. Emergency containment ruptured. The plant's engineered redundancies provided for earthquakes and storms. They did not anticipate a guided thermite charge delivered into the heart of their fractionation unit under conditions optimized to create a vapor cloud. When the final ignition consumed the column, molten metal sprayed like a fountain. The fire propagated through interconnected vessels, each rupture feeding the next. The initial white-hot thermite flare had done its job. It had pierced the shell and started the cascade. The fuel-air blast turned the complex into a furnace. Flames leapt along, piping like a contagion. For the operators across the control screens, telemetry slid towards zero as propulsive energy vanished, and the machines that had been instruments of strategy became simple physical mass, surrendered to inertia and heat. There was no score-keeping in the aftermath, no victory chant. The instruments recorded what they were designed to record: pressure spikes, temperature excursions, and structural failures. The plant's emergency sirens, the tactical callbacks, the shouted inputs in a control room, those were cut into a montage of human responses that did not affect the unfolding chemistry. The mission had been executed by combining small, inexpensive platforms with autonomous navigation, purposeful redundancy, and a precise exploitation of the target's safety architecture. Low-cost systems had leveraged physics and procedure to produce a high-cost outcome. When the thermite burned and the fuel-air cloud detonated, the explosion did not linger to be admired. It consumed itself in the violence of the transition from potential to kinetic energy. In the minutes leading to ignition, choices had been simple and mechanical. They centered around route, timing, redundancy, the decision to switch to manual control despite latency, the operator's final acceptance of predictive piloting. Each choice had a consequence measured in meters and degrees and seconds. The result read like an engineering failure, an unplanned release of stored energy, and like a surgical strike. There was no postscript on the screen for operators who had managed inputs and held their breaths. Battery icons blinked to flat. Video thumbnails went black. The last telemetry packets were like the final words of a radio play, brief, inflected, and then silence. The cameras that had once framed pipes and warning signs framed only ash and smoke. The mission's aim had been reached with a mechanical certainty that refused moral annotation. The cryogenic column had been compromised. The cascade had begun. The rest was fire, structural collapse, and the physics the designers had written into the materials themselves. If you want to follow how this war evolves, from ground skirmishes to drone swarms to strikes from the sky, subscribe and stay with us for the next strike.